Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we're going to kick it off with a question from Benjamin McCoy, who asked, "Hey Thor, do you think that the move from niche to mainstream is killing franchises? I think that the most successful franchises remain niche, like how Star Wars, Star Trek, and so many others were in the past. Once someone involved began trying to bring a fresh audience instead of sticking to the exclusive spirit of the original, the specter of apathy eventually set in. Look at Star Wars, Doctor Who, the MCU, they just lack what made them event movies and shows. Eager to hear what you think." Alright, so first of all, I don't know that I'd necessarily call Star Wars niche, though I think I know what you're trying to say or kind of implying here, that the more you try to make something that appeals to everybody or to as many people as possible, the more it becomes something that those who really like it, who have always liked it, aren't going to see it as the same thing anymore, or they're not going to enjoy it as much because it's being changed or altered in order to appeal to even more people. It's being compromised for profit, essentially. And the strange thing about that is, in regards to Star Wars, is that inherently you could say there's already something about Star Wars that gives it massive appeal. It didn't become the biggest movie in the world at the time, way back in 1977, and remain this huge franchise over the next 50 years and have three massively successful film trilogies, speaking strictly of box office success, because it only had this really small audience and only a few people really got into it. There is just something about Star Wars, likely how well it executed the hero's journey, coupled with incredible special effects, especially for the time, the interesting settings or the world building, likable characters, incredible score, and so on. But there is just something about it, maybe it's the perfect storm of all those things, that again already makes it something that, as is, has wide appeal, that many different types of people from all walks of life can enjoy and have become fans of. And personally, I think it's a fool's errand to try and chase even more people or an even bigger audience when the audience you already have is pretty massive. I think there are some people out there, and I've met a few in my day certainly, that just don't like Star Wars for whatever reason, and trying to make it for them isn't going to get them to suddenly like it. There's just nothing you could ever do short of, as I was kind of saying, short of really changing what it is, that's going to make it appeal to the people who don't currently like it or doesn't currently appeal to. And I really like to think of this as the one-size-fits-all problem, where in theory, you would think the best approach a business could take when trying to sell a product, and let's use a piece of clothing for example here, but it's to make it something that virtually anyone could use or wear, that you make it so generic, let's say, that yeah, pretty much anyone could technically wear this thing. But if it's made that way, it's likely not going to look very good on many people at all, if pretty much anyone, and thus very few people are actually going to buy the product because it's not actually tailored for them. It's just kind of, again, generic. Thus, it actually makes more sense to create a product that is made in a very specific way for the people who like that sort of thing. And again, in the case of Star Wars, that's actually already a lot of people. Basically, the more you try to make something that everybody enjoys, and I mean literally everybody, the more likely it isn't going to really be enjoyed by anyone because it's just too generic, it's not specific enough for anyone. And no, this isn't an argument to make Star Wars only for the die-hard fans or anything like that. For one, I do understand basic economics here. I get that Disney purchased Lucasfilm to make money off of Star Wars, and I know they have to profit off of it in order to justify continuing to produce it and all of that. And thus I realize, like virtually any company, they want to increase their customer base to increase their profits, even if it was already a pretty substantial customer base to begin with. But I would argue the best way to make more Star Wars fans, and to keep the ones you already have pretty happy, isn't to make Star Wars for those who don't currently enjoy it or likely never will. It's to continue to make it in a way, a similar way. It can be changed here and there. Yes, you do want to keep it fresh and new to some degree, but it's to continue to make it in a way or for the people who have always enjoyed it, because that has a very, very successful track record. Again, there is just something inherently about Star Wars, when it's done well, that a lot of people are just naturally going to enjoy and become fans of. Again, look at how many people became fans of the original Star Wars because it was good Star Wars. So in theory, you just continue to make good Star Wars, which easier said than done, I know, but continue to make Star Wars the way it was made, and a lot of people are going to enjoy it. You don't have to, for example, try to make Star Wars for women, because surprise, surprise, Star Wars, long before Rey ever came around, already had plenty of female fans who loved it just the way it was. And no, I'm not saying Star Wars shouldn't have a female protagonist or anything like that. Not to completely contradict myself now, but I'm okay with them, with Lucasfilm and Disney, yeah, trying to make it a bit more, shall we say, accommodating. Like by making the main character of the sequel trilogy a young woman, so that, sure, maybe women who think Star Wars isn't something for them, because yes, I do believe there maybe is a sort of stigma sometimes around female fans of these sorts of things. My wife, who is a huge Star Wars fan, has talked before over on my other channel about how sometimes other girls, at least when she was growing up, they gave her a hard time for the things she liked for liking Star Wars. But anyway, I don't have a problem, or didn't have a problem, with the idea of Rey, that she was going to be a Luke Skywalker type character that would go on her own hero's journey, that would struggle and face defeat before finally figuring it all out and winning in the end. So that perhaps young women would feel like this was an invitation to give Star Wars a try. Just like others before them, other women before them, gave Luke Skywalker a try and found out that even though Luke was a dude, they could still go on the journey with him and relate to him just fine, the same way young boys would have been able to go along for the ride with Rey if, in my opinion anyway, her story would have been handled a little bit better. So yeah, basically here, I don't think you need to try and make Star Wars for different groups of people when there's something about good Star Wars that appeals to pretty much all groups of people, and those who it doesn't appeal to, it's never going to appeal to no matter what you try and do. I understand, again, Disney wanting as many people watching Star Wars content and buying the merch as possible. I get all that. I get that they want a huge fan base. But guess what? Star Wars already has a huge fan base because of what it has always been. You don't need to change the formula in order to lure in more people. You need to figure out the formula in the first place, the original one, in order to lure in people because it did a hell of a job at it back in the day and has for decades. All right, let's do one more question here, and it comes to us from Lucidus, who said, "Hey Thor, interested to know yours and other people's experiences. Vast amounts of people I know that are aware of Grogu have never actually watched The Mandalorian and still refer to Grogu as Baby Yoda. I wonder how many people actually know what The Mandalorian and Grogu actually is." And we actually had a very similar conversation to this the other night on my Discord during my weekly voice chat. And I'm not sure how many people actually know who Grogu is, those who, of course, haven't watched the show or aren't Star Wars fans. I do think he is still Baby Yoda to a lot of people, and that a lot of people never actually watched the show. They just saw Baby Yoda, how cute he was, how adorable he was, and they bought merchandise and became fans of him. I've said before, I think the biggest problem with The Mandalorian, not that it's technically a problem, but that it didn't really make Star Wars fans as much as it made Baby Yoda fans. I know several people who have only watched the show because of Baby Yoda, and when he was going to go away, they weren't going to watch it anymore, which is why I theorized that Disney brought him back pretty quickly, or for season 3, because they were afraid people would stop watching. Though the question is, how many people actually do watch the show, and how many people just like Baby Yoda for Baby Yoda and have never bought, or should I say never watched the show? And I think that question won't be answered until next year when the movie comes out. I'm going to be very curious to see how that movie does at the box office, because I do think there are a lot of people who either A, don't really care so much about Baby Yoda anymore, who, yeah, they were a part of the fad or craze a few years ago and they bought their merchandise, which has convinced Disney that he must be a thing that is going to permeate pop culture for years and years to come. And how many people never really cared about him in the first place? They just kind of saw him, they maybe bought something here or there, but never really watched the show and have no interest in watching the movie. Again, going to be very curious to see how this film does next year. Alright, well, I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here. Or you can ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do, you start your comment off with, "Hey Thor." I try to answer your question in a future video. But whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.